So I was asked to consider writing a book for this new series and was given a list of the possible topics. And one of the topics suggested was working with different second language writer student audiences in the same classroom. And this topic grabbed my attention right away because I've been teaching for over 25 years now in California, and over time have watched the second language writer population evolve and change into at least two different audiences, and later what I thought of as three distinct populations of student writers. And I started noticing this as a teacher and a teacher educator and a supervisor and then as a researcher. And so I thought it would be interesting and challenging to explore the notion of these different student audiences in more depth, and to think about what that meant for me and for other teachers and for the student writers that we work with. As I started planning and reading and thinking about writing the book, I got the idea of entering the conversation in the book with three different stories of three different students. And so in chapter 1 of the book, I introduced these students whom I nicknamed John and Hector and Luciana. John is an international student. Hector is a late arriving resident immigrant student. And Luciana is what some of us call Generation 1.5, or an early arriving immigrant student, although actually she's a US born bilingual. And so I had their profiles and samples of their texts. And as I started writing about them, I noticed some other things. I noticed not only things about their backgrounds and their writing, which was really distinct. Their backgrounds were distinct, their texts were distinct, the features and issues presented by their texts were distinct. But also the institutional context and the programs and the challenges they were facing as they pursued their studies were distinct. And so as I worked on the book, I started conceptualizing a larger audience for it than where I had started. I think when I started writing it and the editors who recruited me started thinking of me writing it, we were envisioning second language writing teachers primarily teaching in ESL or second language writing classrooms distinctly. But as I started thinking about where some of these different student audiences are found these days, I realized they're all over the place. They're in mainstream composition classes, they're in support services like writing centers and basic writing classes, and they're in classes all across the disciplines and in various content areas. So my view of who I was writing to and what the book should be about broadened as I continued working on it. And it shaped the flavor of the book and kind of changed it as it went along. And for example, I ended up adding a fairly substantial chapter to the book about program design and a lot of issues that I think would be very interesting to writing program administrators, as well as classroom teachers, but more the big picture of where do second language writers fit in different types of college programs and college classrooms. So the outline of the book is pretty simple. The first couple of chapters introduce these three student audiences, the definitions, some of the challenges and issues they face, particularly in academic settings. Then it moves from general to specific, talking about implications of different audiences for program design, for individual course design, and then for classroom instruction. And then the book wraps up with kind of a where do we go from here section. What are some program models around the country that have been successful? What are some areas for further research? And then there's a postscript where I talk about the need for further collaboration and work in cross-disciplinary ways, and particularly between mainstream composition instructors and second language writing specialists. And I think, so I'm hoping that this book will have some wide interest and appeal to these different audiences, and I've tried to write it in a way that would be accessible to people who haven't necessarily had a lot of linguistics background or in second language acquisition, but I think even seasoned second language writing specialists will find something there for them. I know for myself, I've had to retool or retrofit myself to adapt my strategies and my understanding of what it means to be a writing teacher as these audiences have evolved and changed in my classes. So I enjoyed writing it. It turned out differently than what I thought when I first started, but I'm happy with the result, and I hope that readers enjoy it.